Hi there YouTube friends, welcome back to Mom's Greek Kitchen, the channel where I teach you my mom's Greek recipes, in her honor. Today's recipe is Keftethes. Keftethes. Keftethes are Greek meatballs. They are similar to other meatballs except that they are seasoned with oregano, fresh mint, onions and garlic, and other good things. I will be making them with chicken today because I'm making these for a potluck and a few of the people there do not eat red meat. But normally we would make it with beef or lamb or wild game or a mixture of all of those. It's a great meatball, so let's get cooking. Okay, we are now going to start our keftethes. Like I said, today I'm doing it with ground chicken, but normally we would make it with ground beef at home, or on occasion Mom would use wild game because Dad is a hunter and he would always have, you know, either venison or moose or caribou or what have you. We've also had it done with like wild goose or wild duck ground up. Not flavors I like. I also don't like lamb, so no lamb for me. But beef and pork and etc. are great. So I'm using chicken. I've got about 1.5 pounds, 2 pounds. I'm going to add a large white onion, chopped finely. I'm going to add our garlic. I've got several cloves here, probably 3 or 4. Depends on how much garlic you like. I'm going to add breadcrumbs. I'm using fresh breadcrumbs. Mom always used fresh breadcrumbs. She would use leftover bread, her own bread, and she would cut the crust off and run it under the cold water tap and let it sit for a second, and then she would let it sit for, you know, about 15-20 minutes, and then she would squeeze all the extra water out, and then she would crumble it between her fingers. It's a great way to go, but I don't have any homemade bread right now, so I have store-bought, and I just ran it through the food processor, and fine crumbs is what I got. I did not wet these because the store-bought bread doesn't hold up to getting wet much. It goes really mushy. I'm adding a couple of eggs. I'm adding some seasoning, some salt, and some pepper. We're going to rectify the seasonings before we actually start the meatballs, but for now, just put in enough that you think is good. Here I've got about a tablespoon and a half of oregano leaves. This is actually homegrown. And we always rub it between our hands to release the flavor. And here is probably the surprising ingredient in Greek meatballs, and that's mint. Spearmint to be exact in this case. That's what Mom always used, that's what she grew. Just chopped finely. It goes really well with beef and lamb and the venison. I have never tried Greek meatballs with chicken, so this is an experiment, and I will tell you how it comes out. Some olive oil, just a good drizzle, and that's pretty much everything that we have in the actual meatball itself. Now we're going to get in there and we're going to mush it all up. Yeah, that's not bad. So if you find it a little dry, just add a little bit more olive oil or another egg, depending on how dry it is. If it's too wet, the only option you have is to add more meat or more bread. However, if you add too much bread, then it's not really meatballs anymore, it's bread balls with meat. So add your liquids slowly at the beginning. It's easier to add than to remove. Alright, I'm just going to go wash my hands and we will be back to shape our meatballs. Alright, we're ready to start cooking our meatballs. So I'm going to use vegetable oil. Mom would normally use olive oil, but these are heavy enough flavor-wise without having to use the olive oil, which is also more expensive. So we're gonna the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take one of our meatballs and flatten it out, and we're gonna fry it up and taste it and see how good our seasonings are, and if we need to add anything then we will add to the mixture before we make our meatballs. So I've got my sampler cooking here. I've dipped it in flour to keep it from sticking, and the flour also helps later when I do the when I make the meat sauce with the meatballs to thicken up slightly. Now another way you can cook them, if you're doing a big batch and you've got, let's say, a party happening, whatever, is you can roast them off in the oven. They won't be quite as nice and crispy on the outside, but it's a good way to do a lot of them. Make sure you line your baking pan with foil for easy cleanup, because they do make a mess, and you want a pretty deep pan because they will leak out the fat depending on what kind of meat you're using for your meatballs. Alright, so I tasted our meatball, our sampler. The seasonings are fine. Okay, we're ready to shape our meatballs. I'm going to use a portioner just because I'd like them all to be about the same size. I'd like them not huge, but I don't like tiny ones either. I'm going to be actually making these into Keftethes salsa, which is meatballs in sauce to put over pasta. So I want them, you know, bite-sized, good bite size or two. So these are about 1 inch across, I would say. And I'm just going to continue making them. If you find that the mixture is sticking to your hands, run your hands or have a little bowl of water to just dampen your palms. It works really well and makes nice smooth balls actually at the same time. So I'm going to continue going until all the meat ball mixture is done, and we'll go to the next step. So now I'm going to I made my meatballs. I'm going to roll them in flour, and I'm just going to pan fry them. We don't want to do, we don't want our oil too hot. We want about a medium high. You want to give them time to cook to the middle without burning the outside. Roll them into flour, dust them off, so you don't have too much flour in your oil, which will burn and make them ugly. I have another bowl with lined with paper towels, which I will put the finished meatballs in to drain some of the oil off. You want a nice crispy outside, and you want to keep moving them so they keep their nice shape. Bring you down a little bit. So on my induction, it's I've got it at about 275. I just turned it down to 275. So see how that works. Surprisingly, the chicken tastes pretty good in this. I was actually quite surprised that they're pretty close to the beef ones. Of course, they are going to be a little different, but the seasonings come through nicely. Set you guys here. Alrighty, I think our meatballs are pretty much done. Just a few more seconds maybe here and there. And I'm going to take them out of the pan and put them into a plate or a bowl lined with paper towel to drain some of the oil. And I will then continue on with the rest of the meatballs until everybody's done. And I will be back to show you the finished product. And here we are with our completed batch of our Keftethes. They're allowed to cool a little bit. They're nicely cooked inside. A little pale because they're chicken, but let's see how they taste. Surprisingly good for being chicken. So, that is our Keftethes recipe. I will be turning these into Keftethes salsa, which will be another recipe. So come back and join me for the next recipe, and please like and subscribe if you like what you saw, and I'll keep making these for you guys. Have a lovely day. Take care. Bye bye.